The acrid smell of burning paper filled my small attic room, curling through the cracks beneath the door like venomous smoke. I pressed my back against the wooden wall, my fingers trembling as I clutched the ceramic bowl I'd been using to wash my face. Through the floorboards, I could hear their laughter. Sharp, cruel, deliberate. Maya and Serena, my stepsisters. "Did you see her face when the courier handed it to her?" Maya's voice drifted up, honeyed with malice, like she actually thought she had a chance. "As if any alpha would look twice at someone like her," Serena added, and something glass shattered below, probably thrown in celebration. Father's charity case, playing dress-up with real wolves. I set the bowl down carefully, my hands still shaking. The invitation had arrived 3 hours ago, delivered by a silver-clad courier who'd looked through me as if I were made of mist. Heavy cream parchment, sealed with midnight blue wax and the crescent moon symbol of the royal pack. Every unmated wolf in the territory between 18 and 30 had received one. The mating ceremony, held once every 5 years at the capital, where alphas and eligible wolves gathered under the full moon to find their destined mates. I'd held that invitation like it was made of starlight. For just a moment, standing in the front hall with afternoon sun streaming through the windows, I'd let myself imagine it. A dress that actually fit, music. The possibility that somewhere in that grand assembly, someone might see me, really see me. Then Maya had snatched it from my hands. "Let's see what they sent the orphan," she'd said, her perfectly manicured nails tearing at the seal. Serena had crowded close, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulder as she read aloud in a mocking, sing-song voice. And then, they'd looked at each other, with that particular gleam that always preceded my suffering. They'd taken it to the fireplace. I moved to the tiny window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Outside, the evening was bleeding into night, the sky turning that particular shade of purple that made everything look bruised. Our estate, my stepfather's estate, I reminded myself, never mine, sprawled across the hillside below, all manicured gardens and stone pathways. Beyond it, the forest began, dark and dense and full of secrets. I was 23 years old, and I'd never been allowed to run in those woods. My wolf stirred inside me, a restless presence that had been growing more agitated with each passing day. She was different from other wolves I'd sensed. Quieter, smaller, as though she took up less space in the world. When I'd first shifted at 13, 3 years later than most, my stepmother had looked at me with such disappointment that I'd felt it like a physical blow. "Weak bloodline," she'd pronounced, as if diagnosing a disease. "I warned your father this would happen, taking in a stray." My father. I barely remembered him, just impressions of warmth, of strong arms lifting me up, of a laugh that rumbled like distant thunder. He'd died when I was 7, and my mother had followed 6 months later, her heart simply giving up. That's what they'd told me, anyway. I sometimes wondered if hearts could break so thoroughly that they forgot how to beat. My stepfather, Richard Ashford, had married my mother when I was 5. He'd seemed kind enough then, in that distant way adults have with children who aren't quite theirs. But after my parents died, kindness had curdled into obligation, and obligation into resentment. I became the reminder of his first wife's existence, the ghost at the table, the evidence that he'd once loved someone who wasn't my stepmother, Elena. Elena had brought Maya and Serena from her first marriage, 2 daughters as sharp and beautiful as cut crystal, and just as cold. They were everything I wasn't, tall, confident, their wolves strong and dominant. Maya was 25, Serena 24. They'd both found mates last ceremony, wealthy alphas from prominent families. They'd moved into the main house's east wing with their husbands, holding court like queens, and I remained in the attic, sleeping in what had once been a storage room. A knock at my door made me turn, not Maya or Serena, their entrances were never announced. This was softer, almost apologetic. "Come in," I said, my voice hoarse from disuse. I spent so much time alone that sometimes I forgot how to speak at normal volume. The door creaked open, and Mrs. Whitmore slipped inside, her weathered face creased with concern. She'd been the estate's housekeeper since before I was born, one of the few people who remembered my parents, who sometimes looked at me with something other than contempt or indifference. "Oh, child," she whispered, and the kindness in her voice made my throat tight. She was holding something, a bundle of dark fabric. I heard what they did. "I'm so sorry." "It's fine." I lied, the words automatic after years of practice. I wasn't going to go anyway. Don't do that. Mrs. Whitmore set the bundle on my narrow bed, then turned to face me fully. Don't make yourself smaller to make their cruelty easier to bear. You had every right to attend that ceremony. Had, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Past tense. The invitation's gone. Invitations can be reissued. She unfolded the fabric. A dress, I realized. Simple but elegant, made of deep blue material that seemed to capture light like water. I've been saving this. It was your mother's. My breath caught. I moved closer, my fingers hovering over the fabric but not quite touching, as if it might dissolve under my hands. I can't. You can. Mrs. Whitmore's voice was firm now, brooking no argument. And you will. There's a way to attend without an invitation, you know. The ceremony is open to all unmated wolves. The invitations are merely formality, courtesy. But the mating ceremony begins at midnight, she continued, speaking over my protests. The gates to the capital's ceremonial grounds open at 11. Anyone who arrives before the moon reaches its peak is permitted entry. She pressed the dress into my hands. Your mother would want you to go. She'd want you to have every chance at happiness. I stared down at the dress, this ghost of my mother's past, and felt something crack open inside my chest. Not quite hope. I'd learned to be wary of hope, but something adjacent to it, something that felt dangerously like possibility. They'll be furious, I said softly. They're already furious, Mrs. Whitmore pointed out. Might as well give them a real reason. She left me then, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like permission. I laid the dress out on my bed, smoothing the fabric with trembling fingers. The blue was the color of twilight, of that moment between day and night, when the world holds its breath. I tried to imagine myself wearing it, standing in the ceremonial grounds with hundreds of other wolves, the full moon overhead, and the possibility of destiny in the air. My wolf stirred again, more insistent this time. She wanted this. She wanted to run, to be seen, to find whatever it was we'd been missing all these years in this house that had never been a home. The floorboards creaked below, more laughter. A door slammed. The sounds of Maya and Serena preparing for their evening. They'd be attending the ceremony despite already having mates, using it as a social event, a chance to parade their status and beauty. I looked at my reflection in the small, cracked mirror mounted on the wall. Pale blonde hair that I kept tied back in a braid to keep it out of the way. Gray eyes that always seemed too large for my face, too vulnerable. I was small, thin from too many skipped meals and years of being told to make do with less. My wolf was visible in my eyes if you knew how to look, a shadow behind my pupils, watching, waiting. What do you think? I whispered to her, to myself, to the ghost of my mother who might have worn this dress and felt beautiful in it. Should we go? The answer came not in words but in feeling, a surge of longing so intense it made my knees weak. Yes. Yes. We had to go. We had to try. I pulled the dress on carefully, afraid of tearing the delicate fabric. It fit almost perfectly, just a little loose in the waist, the hem falling to my ankles. There was no mirror large enough to see myself fully, but I could feel the difference. The way the fabric moved, the way it made me stand a little straighter. I didn't have shoes elegant enough for such a dress, only my worn leather boots. I didn't have jewelry or perfume or any of the things Maya and Serena spent hours applying before social events. But I had this dress, and I had the stubborn, reckless determination that had kept me alive through years of systematic cruelty. It would have to be enough. The house grew quieter as night deepened. I heard Maya and Serena leave around 10, their laughter fading as their car pulled away down the long drive. Richard and Elena had left earlier, attending a dinner party at a neighboring estate. The house settled into the particular silence of emptiness, broken only by the wind against the windows and the distant sound of Mrs. Whitmore moving through the rooms below. At 11 o'clock, I slipped out of my room and down the narrow servants' staircase. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure the entire house could hear it. I half expected someone to appear and block my way, to drag me back to the attic and lock the door. But no one came. Mrs. Whitmore was waiting by the kitchen door, a thin jacket in her hands. "Take this," she said, helping me into it. "The night's cold, and the capital is a 2-hour walk." 2 hours? My voice came out smaller than I'd intended. "Unless you want to call for a car." she said, her eyes twinkling despite the worry creasing her forehead. Though I imagined that might defeat the purpose of sneaking out, she was right. I nodded, pulling the jacket close. Go through the forest, Mrs. Whitmore instructed. Follow the stream north until you reach the old stone bridge, then take the eastern path. It'll bring you to the capital's southern gate. She pressed something into my hand, a small cloth bundle, bread and cheese. You'll need your strength. I wanted to hug her, to thank her for being the only kindness in this house of thorns, but the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I squeezed her hand, hoping she could feel everything I couldn't say. Then I stepped out into the night. The moon was rising, fat and full, painting everything silver. The air smelled of pine and damp earth and freedom. I took a deep breath, letting my wolf rise closer to the surface, lending me her senses. Suddenly, the darkness was less dark, the sounds of the night more distinct. I ran. Not a full shift. I didn't dare. Not this close to the house, but with my wolf's strength flowing through my human muscles. The forest opened before me like a secret being shared, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something that might have been joy. The stream found me as much as I found it, the sound of water over stones calling me north. I followed it, my boots splashing through shallow crossings, my breath coming fast and crystalline in the cold air. The trees grew denser, their branches interlocking overhead like clasped hands. Somewhere far off, an owl called, and another answered. Time became elastic, measured only in footsteps and heartbeats. The old stone bridge appeared suddenly, materializing out of the darkness like something from a fairy tale. It was ancient, moss-covered. The stones fitted together without mortar. I paused there, catching my breath, looking back the way I'd come. I couldn't see the estate anymore, just forest and moonlight, and the endless possibility of forward. The eastern path was narrower, winding through stands of birch trees that glowed ghost-white in the darkness. My wolf pushed closer, making my fingers tingle with the urge to shift, to run faster, to shed my human skin like an outgrown coat. Soon, I promised her. After the ceremony, if nothing comes of it, we'll run. We'll leave this place and never come back. She settled slightly, soothed by the promise. The capital's lights appeared gradually. First just a glow against the sky, then individual pinpricks, then the full sprawl of civilization. The city was larger than I'd imagined, spreading across the valley like a fallen constellation. At its heart, elevated on a hill, was the ceremonial ground, an open amphitheater surrounded by ancient oaks, with the royal pack's mansion rising behind it like a crown. I emerged from the forest at the southern gate just as the clock tower struck 11:30. Wolves were streaming through the gates in groups, laughing and nervous, their formal wear gleaming under streetlights. I hung back, suddenly aware of how I must look. My mother's old dress, my battered boots, my pale hair windswept from running. But I'd come this far. I wouldn't turn back now. I joined the flow of people moving toward the ceremonial grounds, keeping my head down, trying to be invisible. It was a skill I'd perfected over years. How to take up no space, how to move through a room without being noticed. Here, surrounded by hundreds of strangers, it was almost easy. The grounds were breathtaking. The amphitheater was ringed with torches that burned with blue-white flames, creating an otherworldly glow. The ancient oaks had been decorated with strings of lights that looked like captured stars. In the center of it all was a raised platform where the Alpha King would stand to officiate the ceremony. I found a spot near the back, partially hidden behind one of the massive oak trunks. From here I could see everything without being seen, or so I hoped. The crowd was thick with anticipation, voices rising and falling like waves. I recognized some faces from neighboring territories, but no one I knew well enough to fear recognition. Maya and Serena were somewhere in this crowd, probably near the front where the important families gathered. I'd have to be careful. The clock tower began to strike midnight, each bell note rolling across the grounds like thunder. The crowd fell silent. The torches seemed to burn brighter, and I felt it, a change in the air, a gathering of power so intense it made my skin prickle. The Alpha King was coming. I'd never seen him before. Few had. He ruled from the capital but rarely showed himself, governing through a council of advisors and pack representatives. Some said he was hideously scarred from battles in his youth. Others claimed he was so dominant, so powerful, that his presence alone could make lesser wolves submit without a word. All I knew for certain was that he was unmated, despite being in his early 30s, unusual for an alpha of his standing. There were whispers about a lost love, a tragedy, something that had turned him cold and unreachable. The crowd parted suddenly, a ripple of movement that started at the front and worked its way back. I pressed closer to the tree trunk, making myself smaller, and then I saw him. He was nothing like I'd expected. He moved through the crowd like darkness given form, and every wolf in the amphitheater felt it. That primal pull of absolute dominance, the kind of power that didn't need to announce itself because it simply was. The Alpha King wasn't scarred or monstrous. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful, sharp-edged, cold, utterly uncompromising. Tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair that fell just past his collar, and eyes that caught the torchlight like polished obsidian. He wore all black, simple, elegant, expensive. No crown, no ceremonial robes, nothing to mark his status except the way every other wolf in the grounds unconsciously lowered their gaze as he passed. I couldn't look away. My wolf surged forward so suddenly it almost knocked the breath from my lungs. She'd never reacted like this before, not to anyone, not to anything. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run toward him, to make myself known, No. I pressed my palm flat against the rough bark of the oak tree, using the pain to anchor myself. This was insane. Alpha Kings didn't look at wolves like me. He probably had a dozen suitable matches arranged already. High-born females from powerful packs who could stand beside him without embarrassment. He reached the platform and turned to face the crowd, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice carried across the grounds without him having to raise it. Another display of power, the absolute control he had over his presence. "The full moon rises," he said, and something in his tone made the words feel ancient, ritual. "We gather as wolves have gathered for centuries, to honor the bonds that make us whole. Tonight, the moon will guide those meant to find each other. Tonight, we trust in destiny." It should have sounded rehearsed, formal. Instead, it sounded like a promise wrapped in warning. "Let the ceremony begin." He stepped back, and the crowd released a collective breath they'd been holding. Music began. Drums first, deep and primal, then flutes that sounded like wind through pines. The unmated wolves began to move, circling the platform in the traditional pattern, males and females weaving between each other, following the rhythm. I stayed where I was, hidden by the tree and shadows. I wasn't here to parade myself, to compete with females who belonged in this world. I was here because I'd needed to come, because my wolf had demanded it, because for once in my life I'd wanted to choose something for myself. That would have to be enough. The ceremony unfolded like a dance I'd only heard about but never seen. Wolves would catch each other's eyes across the circle, drawn by something invisible and irresistible. They'd move toward each other, the crowd parting to let them through. And when they met, you could see it, that moment of recognition, of two puzzle pieces discovering they fit. The air would shimmer around them, and everyone would know. A bond had formed. I watched it happen 3 times in the first hour. Each couple was celebrated with cheers and howls. The newly bonded wolves led to a private area, where they could complete their connection away from curious eyes. The Alpha King observed it all from the platform, unmoving, his expression carved from stone. No female approached him, though I saw several glance his way with naked longing. Whether it was respect or fear that kept them at distance, I couldn't tell. "Hiding?" The voice came from beside me, low and amused. I jumped, my heart slamming against my ribs. A man had appeared at my shoulder, younger than the Alpha King, maybe mid-20s, with warm brown eyes and a smile that seemed genuine. He wasn't threatening, but my instinct was still to run. "I'm not—" I started, then stopped. What was the point of lying? "Yes." He laughed softly. "Smart. It's a bit overwhelming, isn't it? All this." He gestured at the swirling crowd, the music, the ritualized chaos of wolves searching for their other halves. "I'm Connor, Beta of the Northern Territories." A Beta. High-ranking then, but his manner was casual, friendly. He didn't seem to expect me to bow or avert my gaze. "I'm no one," I said, which was true enough. Everyone's someone. He leaned against the tree beside me, his posture relaxed. You came alone? Yes. Brave, he observed. Most wolves travel in packs to these things. Safety in numbers and all that. His eyes were kind as they studied my face. Or maybe you're running from something. The accuracy of his guess made me flinch. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Betas were trained to read people, to serve as advisors and diplomats for their alphas. Hey, he said, his voice gentling. I'm not judging. Half the wolves here are running from something. Expectations, mostly. Family pressure to find a mate from the right bloodline to strengthen the right alliances. He shook his head. Sometimes I think we've forgotten what this ceremony is supposed to be about. What's it supposed to be about? I asked, surprising myself. I wasn't usually brave enough for conversation. Finding the person who sees you, Connor said simply. Not your rank, not your family name, not what you can offer politically. Just you. The person you are when no one's watching. He smiled again, self-deprecating. Idealistic, I know, but I like to think it still happens sometimes. Before I could respond, a commotion rippled through the crowd. Voices raised in anger, a snarl that made my wolf bristle with instinctive alarm. Connor straightened immediately, his casual demeanor vanishing beneath something harder, more alert. Stay here, he told me, then moved toward the disturbance with the fluid grace of a predator. I should have listened, should have stayed hidden in my safe shadows. But something pulled me forward. Curiosity, or maybe just the sense that hiding had never actually kept me safe before. The crowd had formed a circle around two males, both in partial shift, their eyes glowing with wolf light, their canines extended. They were circling each other, bristling with aggression, while a female stood off to the side, looking terrified. Back off, one of them snarled. She's mine. The bond, you're wrong. The other interrupted, his voice thick with the growl of his wolf. I felt it. She's my mate. Oh, this was bad. Two males claiming the same female meant one of two things. Either one was lying, driven by desire rather than genuine bond, or something had gone catastrophically wrong with the moon's magic. Either way, it would end in bloodshed. The Alpha King descended from the platform, moving with that same liquid grace, and the fighting males froze. He didn't say anything, didn't need to. His presence was command enough. He looked at the female first, his dark eyes assessing. Who do you feel drawn to? She was crying, her shoulders shaking. I don't know. I felt something with both of them, but it's not clear. It's never clear anymore. Anymore? The Alpha King's voice sharpened. Explain. The bonds, she whispered. They're getting weaker. Haven't you noticed? Fewer connections forming each ceremony, and the ones that do form are muddy, confused. Something's wrong with the magic, a collective intake of breath from the watching crowd. This wasn't just gossip or rumor. This was a pack member speaking truth to power, and the fear in her voice made it real. The Alpha King's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Concern? Anger? It was gone too quickly to name. Take her to the healing wing, he said to Connor, who'd appeared at his side, and separate these two until we can sort this out properly. His gaze swept the crowd, and I swear I felt it pass over me like cold fire. The ceremony continues. If you feel uncertain about a bond, report it immediately. We'll investigate every connection. The music resumed, but the mood had shifted. The celebration felt forced now, brittle. Wolves moved through the patterns with less confidence, second-guessing every flicker of attraction. I started to retreat back to my tree, back to invisibility, when I felt it. A pull. Sharp and sudden, like a hook sinking into the center of my chest and yanking hard. My wolf threw herself against my skin, desperate, demanding. I stumbled, catching myself against someone's shoulder, mumbling an apology. The pull intensified, not painful, but insistent, undeniable. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to move, to follow it, to find the source. I looked up and met the Alpha King's eyes across the amphitheater. The world stopped. Everything, the music, the crowd, my own heartbeat, fell away until there was only him. Only those dark eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that should have incinerated me on the spot. I saw his body go rigid, saw his hands curl into fists at his sides. He felt it too. The bond, the pull, The impossible, undeniable connection that shouldn't exist between an alpha king and a nobody from the attic. My wolf was howling inside me, crying out in recognition and joy and desperate longing. Mate, 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 no. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't possible. I did the only thing my panicked brain could conceive. I ran. I turned and shoved through the crowd, ignoring the startled exclamations, the hands that tried to stop me. I had to get out, had to get away before he reached me, before this impossible thing became real and destroyed whatever fragile existence I'd managed to build. Wait! Connor's voice behind me, but I didn't stop. I made it to the edge of the grounds, past the torches, and into the blessed darkness of the surrounding gardens. I could hear pursuit, multiple footsteps, voices calling out. My wolf was fighting me every step, trying to turn around, to go back to him. Please, I begged her. Please, we can't. You don't understand what this would mean. But she didn't care about consequences or logic, or the vast gulf between what he was and what I was. She only knew that we'd found our mate, and every instinct demanded we claim him. I made it to a small fountain, hidden behind overgrown hedges, and collapsed against the stone rim. My lungs burned. My chest ached where the bond pulled, stretched too far, demanding I return. Footsteps approached, not running now, just walking with steady, inevitable purpose. He emerged from the shadows like something carved from night itself, and there was nowhere left to run. The Alpha King stood 3 feet away from me, his chest rising and falling with breaths that seemed too controlled, too measured. His eyes found mine in the darkness, and I watched something break open behind them. Shock, disbelief, and underneath it all, a hunger so fierce it made me shiver. You, he said, and his voice was rough, raw, nothing like the controlled tones from the platform. You're... No one, I said quickly, the words tumbling out in panic. I'm no one. There's been a mistake. The magic is broken. You heard what that female said. The bonds are confused. This isn't real. He moved closer, and I pressed back against the fountain, trapped, but he didn't touch me. Just stood there, near enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the cedar and frost scent of him. What's your name? He asked, and it wasn't a request. It was a command from an alpha who expected obedience, but I was so far beyond obedience, beyond sense. Does it matter? Yes. The word came out like a growl. You're my mate. Your name matters more than anything in this world right now. I can't, I whispered. You don't understand. I don't belong in your world. I don't belong anywhere. My throat closed up, tears threatening. Please, just let me go. Forget this happened. Find someone suitable. Suitable. He repeated the word like it tasted foul. I've spent 15 years surrounded by suitable females. I've been offered every high-born wolf in this territory and beyond, and I felt nothing, not a whisper of connection, until tonight, until you. His hand rose slowly, giving me time to move away if I wanted. When I couldn't, his fingers brushed my cheek, so gentle it made my chest ache. You felt it too, he said, not a question. Tell me you didn't. I couldn't lie, not with his touch making my whole body sing, not with my wolf crying out in joy. I felt it. Then why are you running? Because I was terrified, because this couldn't possibly end well. Because fairy tales didn't happen to girls who lived in attics and were burned by their own family. Because I'm broken, I said instead, the truth cutting its way out. Whatever the moon saw in me, whatever made her think we'd be a match. She was wrong. I'm not strong enough for this, for you. He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing a gentle path along my jaw. Then, what's your name? I closed my eyes, surrendering. Ilara. Ilara, he repeated, and the way he said it made it sound like something precious. I'm Nathaniel, and you're not broken. You're mine. The morning after the ceremony, I woke in a room I didn't recognize. For a disorienting moment, I thought I'd dreamed everything, the ceremony, the bond, Nathaniel's dark eyes finding mine across the amphitheater. Then I felt the unfamiliar softness of silk sheets against my skin, saw pale sunlight filtering through curtains that probably cost more than everything I'd ever owned, and reality crashed back with enough force to steal my breath. I sat up carefully, taking stock. I was still wearing my mother's dress, though someone had draped a blanket over me during the night. The room was elegant, but not ostentatious. Cream walls, dark wood furniture, a view of gardens through tall windows. A door to the left presumably led to a bathroom, another straight ahead to a hallway. A prison, however beautiful, was still a prison. I'd tried to leave last night, after Nathaniel had spoken my name, my false name, the one I'd given without thinking because I couldn't bear to tell him the truth. Connor had appeared with 2 other wolves, both radiating the controlled power of trained guards. They'd been respectful but firm. The Alpha King's mate would be staying at the mansion. For her safety. For the completion of the bond. I need to go home, I'd protested, even though the estate had never been home, even though the thought of returning there made me feel sick. Tomorrow, Nathaniel had said, his voice brooking no argument. After the bond settles, after we talk. One night, that's all I'm asking. It hadn't really been a request. Now, in the harsh light of morning, the impossibility of my situation became crystal clear. I couldn't stay here. Eventually, someone would recognize me. Maya or Serena, one of their husbands, any of the dozens of wolves who'd seen me serving at social functions, invisible in my servant's clothes. And when they did, when Nathaniel learned that his mate was the Ashford family's charity case, their father's shameful obligation. A knock at the door made me jump. "Come in," I said, my voice thin. A woman entered, middle-aged and kind-faced, carrying a tray laden with breakfast. She smiled warmly. "Good morning, dear. I'm Margaret, the head housekeeper. His Majesty thought you might be hungry." His Majesty. The title made this whole situation feel even more surreal. Margaret set the tray on a small table by the window, then turned to me with the assessing look of someone who'd spent decades caring for others. "There are clothes in the wardrobe, several options, since we weren't sure of your size. His Majesty asked that you join him for lunch at noon, but until then, you're free to rest, explore the gardens, whatever you'd like." "I need to leave," I said. "I need to go home." Something shifted in Margaret's expression. Sympathy mixed with understanding that made me think she'd seen situations like this before. "Are you running from something, or to something?" The question caught me off guard. "Does it matter?" "Always." She moved to the wardrobe, opening it to reveal an array of dresses, all simple but clearly expensive. "I've worked in this house for 30 years. I've seen a lot of wolves come and go, a lot of fear disguised as other things. And I've learned that running rarely solves the actual problem." "You don't know my problem?" I said, not unkindly. "No," she agreed, "but I know His Majesty, and I know he's been alone a very long time. Alone in ways that have nothing to do with people around him and everything to do with connection." She pulled out a dress in soft gray, laying it across the bed. "Whatever you're afraid of, I suspect it's not him." She left before I could respond, closing the door with a gentle click. I stared at the dress, at the breakfast tray with its array of foods I'd rarely been allowed to eat, at this room that represented everything I'd never have. Margaret was right. I wasn't afraid of Nathaniel. I was afraid of what would happen when he realized what I actually was. But I was also hungry, and the food smelled incredible. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, fresh bread with butter, eggs cooked perfectly, fruit that tasted like summer. When had I last eaten without hurrying? Without fear that someone would take the food away or criticize me for taking too much? Afterwards, I bathed in the enormous tub in the adjoining bathroom, washing away the dirt of last night's run, and the smoke smell that had clung to my hair. The gray dress fit well enough, though it hung loose in places that suggested I was thinner than whoever it had been made for. I had 3 hours until lunch. 3 hours to figure out how to explain to an Alpha King that his mate was a mistake. The gardens called to me, visible through the windows, green and wild despite the season. I found my way outside through a side door, emerging into a world of manicured paths and deliberate wilderness. Someone had designed these gardens to look natural while being anything but. A careful illusion of freedom. I walked without direction, letting my wolf stretch inside me, enjoying the sun and open air. Other wolves passed occasionally, guards on patrol, staff members moving between buildings. But they gave me space, offering respectful nods without approaching. Word had clearly spread about the Alpha King's new mate. The thought made my stomach knot. I found myself in a secluded corner where the gardens gave way to forest, separated only by a low stone wall. Beyond it, trees stretched endlessly, dark and inviting. My wolf pressed forward, longing. Beautiful, isn't it? I spun around. Nathaniel stood several feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. He'd changed from last night's formal wear into simple dark pants and a white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with scars. He looked more human like this, less untouchable, but no less dangerous. I didn't hear you approach, I said, hating how defensive I sounded. I'm good at being quiet when I want to be. He moved closer, stopping at a careful distance, close enough to talk, far enough to not crowd me. You slept well? Yes. Thank you for... I gestured vaguely. Everything. The room, the clothes. But I really should go home now. Home, he repeated, and something in his tone suggested he heard the hollowness in the word. Tell me about home. About your family. My heart kicked against my ribs. There's nothing to tell. You're a terrible liar. No judgment in his voice, just observation. Every time you mention leaving, your wolf recoils. That's not eagerness to return, that's dread. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the sun. It doesn't matter. I don't belong here. You belong wherever your mate is, Nathaniel said quietly. That's how bonds work. But what if the bond is wrong? The question burst out before I could stop it. That female last night said the magic is weakening, getting confused. What if this, I gestured between us, is just another mistake? He was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes studying my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. Do you feel confused about the bond? No, I admitted, but that doesn't mean... And I don't feel confused, he continued. I feel certain. For the first time in 15 years, I feel something other than emptiness. He took a step closer. The female last night was experiencing something different. A faint pull toward multiple males. None of it clear. What you and I have is clear, undeniable. Unless you're going to stand there and tell me you don't feel it. I couldn't. The bond hummed between us like a living thing, growing stronger with proximity. Being near him felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. I feel it, I whispered. Then why are you fighting it? Because I was afraid. Because accepting this meant accepting that I deserved it, and I'd spent so many years being told I didn't deserve anything good. Because the fall from this height would destroy me. Tell me about your family, Nathaniel said again, gentler this time. Please. And maybe it was the gentleness, or maybe I was just tired of carrying the weight alone. But I found myself talking, not about my step-family. I wasn't ready for that revelation yet. But about my parents, my real parents. My mother died when I was 7, I said, staring out of the forest. My father 6 months later. I barely remember them, just impressions. The sound of my mother singing while she cooked. The way my father would lift me onto his shoulders so I could see over crowds. I'm sorry. The words were simple, but the empathy behind them was real. It was a long time ago. I picked at a loose thread on my dress. I don't even know if these memories are real or just stories I've told myself so many times they feel real. Both can be true, Nathaniel said. He moved to lean against the stone wall, angling his body toward me. My mother died when I was 12. Childbirth, the baby didn't survive either. My father followed 5 years later, killed in a territorial dispute. I looked at him sharply. I'd known his parents were dead. Everyone knew that. But not the details. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, he echoed my words, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. But some losses don't diminish with time. They just become part of your foundation. We stood in companionable silence for a moment. Two people built on grief, recognizing each other. I became Alpha King at 17. Nathaniel continued. Too young, unprepared, surrounded by advisors who saw my age as weakness to exploit. I learned quickly that showing vulnerability meant inviting attack. He paused. I learned to be cold, untouchable, and I was good at it. So good that eventually, I forgot how to be anything else, until last night. I said softly, Until last night, he agreed. When a small blonde wolf with terrified gray eyes ran from me like I was a monster, and I realized I'd do anything, give up anything, to make her stay. The raw honesty in his voice made my chest tight. I'm not running because I think you're a monster. Then why? I couldn't answer that. Not without revealing everything. A bell chimed in the distance, noon approaching. Nathaniel straightened, offering his hand. Lunch? I looked at his extended hand, at the possibility it represented. One meal. I could manage one meal, couldn't I, before reality caught up and this fragile moment shattered. I placed my hand in his fingers closed around mine, warm and steady, and the bond flared so bright it almost hurt. My wolf sang. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. Lunch was served in a private dining room overlooking the gardens, intimate and overwhelming in equal measure. 2 places set at a table meant for 20, as if Nathaniel had cleared away the trappings of his position to make space for just us. Connor joined us briefly, bringing news of the previous night's confusion. 3 more bonding disputes had been reported, all with the same characteristics: weak, muddled connections between wolves who'd felt certain at first, but grew uncertain within hours. We're investigating the ceremonial grounds, Connor reported, his easy manner from last night replaced by professional efficiency. If something's interfering with the moon's magic, we need to identify it before the next ceremony. And the disputed pairs? Nathaniel asked. Separated for now. Healer Iris is working with each of them individually, trying to determine if any genuine bond exists or if it's all interference. Nathaniel nodded, then his gaze cut to me. And my bond? Has there been any question about its authenticity? Connor smiled. No, Your Majesty. If anything, it's the clearest bond recorded in decades. The healers can sense it without even touching either of you. Something eased in Nathaniel's expression. He dismissed Connor with thanks, and we were alone again. You were worried, I observed. Terrified, he admitted freely. That I'd finally found you only to discover it was an illusion, that the moon was playing a cruel joke. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. But you're real. This is real. I wanted to believe him, wanted to sink into the certainty in his voice and let it carry me. Instead, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me. Why haven't you mated before? In 15 years, surely there were options. His expression shuddered slightly. There were options. Dozens. And I felt nothing for any of them. At first, I thought I was just being selective, waiting for the bond to form naturally. Then I thought maybe I was broken, that whatever capacity I'd had for that kind of connection had died with my parents. But you weren't broken. No. Just waiting. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. The moon doesn't make mistakes, not about this. She knew I'd need someone brave enough to run from an alpha king, stubborn enough to argue, and strong enough to see past the crown. I'm not strong, I protested. You ran from your home to attend a ceremony where you knew you didn't belong, Nathaniel said. You ran from me when every instinct you had was screaming to stay, and you're sitting here now, terrified but still here. That's not weakness. Before I could respond, Margaret appeared in the doorway, her expression apologetic but urgent. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. There are visitors requesting an audience. They say it's about your mate. Every muscle in my body went rigid. No, not yet. I wasn't ready. Who? Nathaniel asked, his voice sharp. The Ashford family, Margaret said, and my world tilted. They claim that the female you've bonded with is their stepdaughter, I finished, my voice barely audible. I'm their stepdaughter. Nathaniel turned to me slowly, confusion and something else, suspicion maybe, or hurt, flickering across his features. You're an Ashford? No. The denial came swift and vehement. My name isn't, I'm not. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against stone. They're here for me, to take me back. No one is taking you anywhere, Nathaniel said, his voice dropping into that alpha tone that brooked no argument, but his eyes stayed on mine, demanding answers. Explain. Now. And finally, with nowhere left to run and no more lies to hide behind, I told him everything. The words spilled out like poison I'd been holding in for years, each truth more bitter than the last. My parents died when I was 7. My stepfather, Richard Ashford, married my mother when I was 5. After my parents were gone, He kept me out of obligation, not love. His new wife, Elena, she had 2 daughters from her first marriage, Maya and Serena. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warm room. They made it very clear from the beginning that I wasn't family. I was charity, a burden. Nathaniel's expression had gone dangerously still, but he said nothing, letting me continue. I lived in the attic, ate whatever they didn't want, wore hand-me-downs until they fell apart. They treated me like, I swallowed hard, like I was nothing, less than nothing. And yesterday, when the invitation to the ceremony arrived, Maya took it from my hands and burned it, in the fireplace, while Serena laughed. They burned your invitation. His voice was flat, emotionless, in a way that somehow felt more threatening than anger. I wasn't supposed to attend. I was supposed to stay home, stay invisible, stay in my place. A bitter laugh escaped me, but the housekeeper, Mrs. Whitmore, she gave me my mother's dress and told me I could enter without the invitation. So I ran through the forest and came anyway. And now they're here, probably to drag me back, to punish me for, no. The single word cracked through the air like a whip. Nathaniel stood, his full alpha presence flooding the room until I could barely breathe. No one drags you anywhere. No one punishes you. You're under my protection now, and anyone who's harmed you will answer for it. You don't understand, I said desperately. They're a prominent family. Richard sits on the territorial council. His daughters married well. If you make an enemy of them over me, over my mate, Nathaniel interrupted, they'll answer for what they've done to my mate. There's a difference. He moved around the table, stopping in front of me. Did they hit you? I couldn't meet his eyes. Sometimes. A growl built in his chest, low and dangerous. Did they starve you? They fed me, I said quietly. Just, not much, not first. Did they? His voice broke slightly. Did they ever make you shift and force you to stay shifted? Lock you outside during winter? Put silver on your skin? No. I looked up at him then, seeing the fear beneath his fury. Nothing like that. They weren't. It wasn't torture, just cruelty. The everyday kind that doesn't leave visible scars. That's still torture, Nathaniel said softly. His hands rose to cut my face. Gentle despite the rage I could feel trembling through him. The kind that leaves scars where no one can see them is often the worst kind. Footsteps in the hallway, multiple sets, moving with purpose. Margaret appeared again, her expression tight with disapproval. Your Majesty, the Ashfords are becoming insistent. They're demanding to see her. They claim she ran away, and they're here to retrieve her. Let them wait, Nathaniel said, not taking his eyes off me. Actually, no. Show them to the formal receiving room. I'll meet them there shortly. His thumb brushed my cheek. You don't have to see them. You can stay here, and I'll handle this. They'll tell you I'm lying, I said. About everything. They'll make it sound like I was ungrateful, difficult. They're very good at making me seem like the problem. I don't care what they say. His voice was absolute certainty. I know what I see. I know what I feel through the bond, your fear, your pain, your truth. They can spin whatever story they want. It won't change anything. But I couldn't hide. Not anymore. I want to go with you. Nathaniel's eyes searched mine. Are you sure? No. I wasn't sure of anything except that running and hiding had never actually protected me. Yes. He offered his hand, and I took it. His fingers laced through mine, solid and warm, as we walked through the mansion's corridors toward the formal receiving room. I could feel curious eyes on us. Staff members trying not to stare, guards watching with professional assessment. Word of the Alpha King's mate would have spread through the entire compound by now. The receiving room was designed to intimidate. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, a massive desk that elevated whoever sat behind it. Nathaniel led me to a chair beside his own before the desk, a clear statement. We were united. Equal. Ready? He asked quietly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Margaret opened the doors, and my step-family entered like a storm given human form. Richard came first, his graying hair perfectly styled, his expression a mask of concerned authority. Elena followed, elegant in a navy dress that probably cost more than I'd eaten in a year. And behind them, Maya and Serena, both beautiful and cold as winter. They all froze when they saw me sitting beside Nathaniel. Our hands joined. "Your Majesty," Richard began, his voice oily with false deference. "Thank you for seeing us on such short notice. We've been frantic with worry. Our daughter disappeared last night. Stepdaughter," I corrected quietly, and his eyes flicked to me with surprise that I'd spoken. "Yes, well, family regardless." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We've been searching everywhere. When we heard rumors that you'd found your maid at the ceremony and the description matched, we feared the worst." "Feared the worst," Nathaniel repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "Interesting choice of words. What exactly did you fear?" Elena stepped forward, her expression perfectly crafted concern. That she'd done something inappropriate. "Your Majesty must understand, the girl has always been troubled. Prone to fantasy, to making up stories. We've tried to help her, of course, but stop." The command in Nathaniel's voice made everyone in the room flinch. "Let me be very clear about something. This female is my mate, my bonded mate, confirmed by healers and witnessed by hundreds. Every word out of your mouth that insults her is an insult to me personally. Do you understand?" The room went silent. Richard's mask cracked slightly, confusion bleeding through. "Your Majesty, surely there's been some mistake. She's not, that is, her bloodline is weak, her wolf barely functional. She couldn't possibly be suitable." "Suitable," Nathaniel said, standing slowly. His alpha presence filled the room like pressure before a storm. "There's that word again. You all seem very concerned with suitability, with status, with bloodlines. Let me tell you what I see. I see a female who survived years in your house despite your systematic cruelty, who attended a ceremony she had every right to attend, despite you destroying her invitation. Yes, I know about that." His voice dropped to something deadly. "I see my mate, and I see the people who hurt her." "We never hurt her," Maya burst out, her composure cracking. "We gave her a home, food, clothes in the attic," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. "You gave me an attic room that used to be storage. You fed me leftovers after everyone else ate. You gave me clothes you were throwing away." I stood, still holding Nathaniel's hand. "You gave me nothing that wasn't laced with contempt." Serena laughed, sharp and bitter. "Listen to her, playing victim. She had everything she needed. She just couldn't accept her place. Her place." Nathaniel's growl made the windows rattle. "Her place was as your sister, as family. Her place should have been safe and loved and protected. Instead, you made her feel like garbage." "We took her in." Elena's voice rose, her perfect facade crumbling into something ugly. "We didn't have to. Richard's obligation died with her mother. We could have sent her to an orphanage, but we didn't. She should be grateful." "Grateful," I interrupted, and something in me snapped. Years of swallowed words, buried rage, forced silence. All of it rose up in a wave I couldn't contain. "You want me to be grateful that you let me live in your house like a ghost? That you gave me just enough to survive but never enough to feel human? That you spent every day reminding me I was worthless, unwanted, a mistake?" My wolf surged forward, and I felt my eyes shift, felt power flood through me that I'd never experienced before. The bond, I realized distantly. Nathaniel's strength flowing into me, supporting me, telling me I had every right to my anger. "You burned my invitation because you couldn't stand the thought of me finding happiness," I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to choke me. "You couldn't stand the idea that maybe, just maybe, I was worth something to someone. Well, guess what? I am worth something. The moon herself chose me for him. What did she choose for you, Maya? Serena? Oh, that's right. She didn't. You found mates the normal way, without the moon's blessing. And now you have to live with the fact that the girl you treated like trash is the Alpha King's chosen mate." The silence that followed was absolute. Richard recovered first, his expression hardening into something calculating. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, you've only known her for a day. Give it time, and you'll see what we've dealt with for 16 years. She's manipulative, ungrateful. Enough." Nathaniel's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my home and never contact my mate again. You won't speak about her, won't spread rumors about her, won't so much as think her name without respect. Because if I hear that you've said one word against her, if I discover you've caused her even a moment of distress, I will personally ensure that your position on the Territorial Council, and every other privilege you enjoy, disappears." "You can't," Richard started. "I can," Nathaniel interrupted. "I'm the Alpha King. I can do whatever I want. The only question is whether you're smart enough to walk away now or foolish enough to push me further." Connor appeared in the doorway, along with 2 guards. "Your Majesty? Are we escorting guests out?" "Yes," Nathaniel said, his eyes never leaving Richard's face. "And Connor? Make sure everyone knows, all the packs, all the territories, that any wolf who harms or disrespects my mate will answer to me personally. No exceptions." The Ashfords left in humiliated silence, Elena's perfect composure shattered, Maya and Serena's beauty twisted with impotent rage. Richard tried to maintain his dignity, but I saw the fear in his eyes as he passed. He knew what he'd lost. Not a stepdaughter, but the protection and favor of the most powerful alpha in the territory. The doors closed behind them, and I felt my legs give out. Nathaniel caught me before I hit the floor, gathering me against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured into my hair. "You're safe now. You're safe." And finally, I let myself break. I cried for the little girl who'd lost her parents, for the teenager who'd lived in an attic and believed she deserved it, for every moment of cruelty I'd endured and convinced myself was normal. I cried for the invitation burning in the fireplace, for all the times I'd been invisible, for the years of believing I was worthless. Nathaniel held me through all of it, his arms a fortress, his presence an anchor. He didn't try to quiet me or tell me everything was fine. He just held me and let me fall apart, because some things needed to break before they could heal. When the tears finally subsided, I found myself in a different room, smaller, cozier, with a fire crackling in the hearth. Nathaniel had moved us at some point, though I didn't remember the transition. I was curled in his lap on an oversized chair, his hand stroking my hair in soothing repetition. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice hoarse. "I didn't mean to." "Don't," he said firmly. "Don't apologize for having emotions. Don't apologize for breaking down after confronting your abusers. Don't apologize for being human. I ruined your shirt. It was covered in tears, and probably some embarrassing amounts of snot. I have others." His hand cupped my cheek, tilting my face up to meet his eyes. "Are you all right?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel empty, like I've been carrying something heavy for so long that without it, I don't know how to stand. Then we'll figure out how to stand together," Nathaniel said simply. "You don't have to carry anything alone anymore. That's what mates are for. Mates." The word still felt surreal, like something from a story that happened to other people. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now?" Nathaniel considered. "Now you stay here. We complete the bond properly. When you're ready, no pressure. You heal. You figure out who you are when you're not living under their roof and their rules. And I..." He smiled, small but genuine. "I learn everything about you. Your favorite color, how you take your tea, what makes you laugh. All the things mates should know." That sounds... I searched for the word. Terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? I'm not sure yet. I rested my head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "What about the investigation, the weakening bonds?" "Connor's handling it," Nathaniel assured me. "Whatever's interfering with the moon's magic, we'll find it, but that's not your concern right now." "It is, though," I said quietly. "If the bonds are failing, if there's something wrong with the magic that connects mates, what if ours fails too?" Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, his hand stilling in my hair. Then, "Do you feel it failing?" I checked inward, toward the glowing thread that connected us. If anything, it felt stronger than before. Deeper, more solid. "No." "Neither do I," he said. "And even if the magic failed completely, even if the bond disappeared tomorrow, it wouldn't change what I feel. The moon didn't create this. She just recognized it. The connection between us is ours, not hers to take away." I wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that this impossible thing could last. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Margaret entered with another tray, this one laden with tea and small cakes. "Thought you might need this," she said kindly, setting it on a nearby table. She gave me a warm smile. "You did well today, dear," standing up to them like that. "I don't feel like I did well," I admitted. "I feel like I fell apart." "Sometimes falling apart is the bravest thing you can do," Margaret said. "It means you're finally letting yourself feel everything you've been holding back. That takes courage." She nodded to Nathaniel. "I'll make sure you're not disturbed for the rest of the day." After she left, Nathaniel poured tea. 1 sugar, splash of milk, exactly how I liked it despite never telling him. The bond, I realized. He could sense my preferences through our connection. "This is going to take getting used to," I murmured. "We have time." He handed me the cup, his fingers brushing mine and sending warmth racing up my arm. All the time in the world. 3 weeks passed before I truly believed I wasn't going to wake up back in the attic. The first week was hardest. I kept expecting someone to tell me it was all a mistake, that I needed to leave, that Nathaniel had come to his senses and realized he'd bonded with the wrong wolf. Instead, he was patient, constant, present in ways I'd never experienced before. He didn't push for the bond's completion, though I could feel his wolf's frustration through our connection, a low, persistent ache that matched my own. We were both holding back, circling each other like wary animals, until finally one night, I asked him why. "Because you need to choose this," he'd said, his voice rough. "Not because the bond demands it, not because you're grateful or feel obligated. When we complete this, I need to know it's because you want me, specifically, not just what I represent." That night, I'd kissed him for the first time. Properly kissed him. Not the brief, terrified press of lips from the night we'd met, and the bond had sung between us, bright and fierce, and undeniable. We still hadn't completed the mating, that final physical and spiritual union that would lock the bond permanently. But we were close. I could feel it building between us, inevitable as sunrise. The investigation into the weakening bonds had yielded disturbing results. Connor discovered traces of a rare poison in the soil around the ceremonial grounds, something called moonsbane, which disrupted magical connections without killing. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the ceremony, weakening bonds to create chaos and confusion, but they hadn't accounted for bonds strong enough to withstand the poison, like ours. "We're still searching for who did it," Connor told us over breakfast one morning. His easy manner strained with frustration. "The poison takes months to cultivate and must be applied with intent. This wasn't random. Someone wanted to damage the mating ceremony specifically." "Keep looking," Nathaniel said, his hand finding mine under the table. "Double the guard around the next ceremony. If they try again, I want them caught." Life in the mansion had developed a rhythm. I woke beside Nathaniel. Though we slept in separate rooms still, we'd taken to falling asleep together before one of us reluctantly moved. Breakfast with Connor and whatever advisors needed Nathaniel's attention. Then I'd spend mornings in the library, devouring books I'd never had access to before, or walking the gardens with Margaret, who'd become something like the grandmother I'd never known. Afternoons were reserved for learning my role, because whether I'd intended it or not, I was going to be the Alpha King's mate officially, which came with responsibilities. Elena, a different Elena, the elderly female who served as the mansion's protocol instructor, had taken me under her wing with surprising gentleness. "You don't have to be perfect," she'd told me during our first lesson. "You just have to be genuine. People can sense authenticity. Let them see you, truly see you, and they'll follow." The hardest part was believing I deserved any of it. I'd catch myself sometimes, standing in rooms that cost more than most wolves earned in a lifetime, wearing clothes that actually fit, eating meals I'd chosen myself, and the voice in my head would whisper, "This isn't for you. You're an imposter. They'll figure it out." Nathaniel seemed to sense those moments. He'd appear at my side, his hand finding mine, his presence solid and certain. "You belong here," he'd say quietly. "With me. Stop questioning it." Easier said than done. The formal announcement of our bond came in the 3rd week, a ceremony where Nathaniel presented me to the assembled packs as his chosen mate. I'd been terrified, certain that everyone would see through me, that someone would stand up and object. Instead, they'd cheered, hundreds of wolves, all celebrating our bond, howling their approval to the moon. And when Nathaniel had pulled me close and kissed me in front of everyone, declaring our connection for all to witness, I'd felt something shift inside me. The last piece of doubt crumbling, replaced by something that felt dangerously like belonging. Richard Ashford had been in the crowd, required to attend as a council member, I'd seen his face when Nathaniel announced our bond. Shock, rage, calculation. He'd lost more than a stepdaughter. He'd lost leverage, status, any claim to connection with the Alpha King, and everyone knew it. Maya and Serena weren't there. They'd left the territory entirely, their mates taking them to their home packs. I didn't miss them. Now, 3 weeks in, I stood in the gardens at twilight, watching the moon rise fat and full over the trees. Tomorrow was the autumn equinox, a significant date for wolves. A time of balance, of reflection, of making commitments. Nathaniel had asked me, very carefully, if I'd be ready to complete the bond tomorrow night. I hadn't answered yet. Footsteps behind me, familiar now. I didn't turn, just smiled as Nathaniel's arms came around me from behind, pulling me back against his chest. "What are you thinking?" He murmured against my hair that a month ago I was living in an attic, believing I'd never matter to anyone, I said softly. And now I'm here, with you, about to become the Alpha King's mate officially. It doesn't feel real. Does it feel right? His lips brushed my temple. That's more important than real. I turned in his arms, looking up at his face. These features I'd memorized, this male who'd become my safe place. Yes, it feels right. Terrifying, but right. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? He echoed my words from weeks ago, smiling. Good, I decided. Definitely good. So tomorrow night, hope flickered in his eyes, carefully contained. Tomorrow night, I confirmed, and watched his expression transform into pure joy. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and the bond flared bright enough that I gasped. Tomorrow night, that connection would become permanent, unbreakable. Tomorrow night, I'd be his completely, and he'd be mine. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like coming home. The next evening, as the sun bled toward the horizon, Margaret helped me prepare. Not in the elaborate, formal way Elena would have preferred. No ceremonial robes or ritual preparations. Just a simple bath, my hair loose around my shoulders, a dress in deep midnight blue that made my eyes look silver. "Nervous?" Margaret asked, fastening the last button. "Completely," I admitted. "What if I do it wrong? What if—" "There's no wrong way," she interrupted gently. "The bond knows what to do. You just have to trust it. Trust him. Trust yourself." That last part was still hardest. Nathaniel met me in the private garden where we'd first really talked, where he'd told me about his parents, and I'd started to believe I could trust him. The moon was rising, full and luminous, painting everything silver. He looked at me like I was something precious. Like I was everything. "Hi," I said, suddenly shy despite 3 weeks of growing intimacy. "Hi yourself." He closed the distance between us, taking my hands. "You're sure about this? We can wait longer if you need—" I kissed him, cutting off his words, pouring everything I couldn't say into the contact. When I pulled back, his eyes had shifted to wolf light, gold bleeding through the dark. "I'm sure," I whispered. "I'm sure about you, about us, about this. Stop giving me chances to run. I'll always give you chances to run," Nathaniel said seriously. "I'll also always give you reasons to stay. That's how this works." The bond's completion wasn't some mystical, instantaneous thing. It was gradual, a building of intimacy, physical and emotional, under the watching moon. Nathaniel was careful, reverent, making sure I was with him every step. And when the bond finally locked into place, when I felt it snap tight and permanent between us, the sensation was overwhelming. I could feel him. Not just his emotions, but his essence, his strength, his loneliness, his fierce protectiveness, his capacity for love that he'd kept buried for so long. And he could feel me, my fear, my healing wounds, my stubborn hope, my growing certainty that this was where I belonged. We were still separate people, but we were also, irrevocably, us. Afterward, lying tangled together under the stars, Nathaniel traced patterns on my shoulder. "How do you feel?" "Complete," I said, surprised by the truth of it. Like I'd been walking around with pieces missing, and now I'm finally whole. "That's exactly it." He pressed a kiss to my forehead. "That's exactly what you are to me." We stayed there until dawn, talking and silent in turns, learning the new landscape of being bonded mates. When the sun finally rose, painting the sky in golds and pinks, I realized I was crying. "What's wrong?" Nathaniel asked immediately, concerned. "Nothing." I wiped at my eyes, laughing. "Absolutely nothing. I'm just happy." "Is this what happy feels like?" I'd almost forgotten. His arms tightened around me. "Get used to it. I plan to make you happy for the rest of our lives." It was a promise I was finally ready to believe. 6 months later, on the first ceremony since our bonding, I stood beside Nathaniel on the platform overlooking the assembled wolves. The poisoner had been caught, a bitter, unmated wolf who'd believed that if he couldn't find his mate, no one should. The ceremonial grounds had been cleansed, blessed again, the moon's bane purged from the soil. Tonight's ceremony would be clean, pure, the bonds forming as they should. I watched the unmated wolves circle, saw the moment connections sparked, witnessed the joy of recognition between destined pairs. Each successful bond felt like a small victory, proof that the magic still worked, that love still found a way. Connor approached with a young female, one of the wolves who'd experienced a confused bond last ceremony. "Your Majesty," he said to Nathaniel, then smiled at me. "Luna, may I present Sarah? It turns out her bond was genuine, just weakened by the poison. Now that it's cleared, she and her mate have completed their connection." Sarah beamed, radiant with happiness. "Thank you," she said to both of us, "for investigating, for not giving up, for showing us that real bonds can survive anything." After she left, Nathaniel pulled me close. "That's your legacy," he murmured. "Not just being my mate, being the wolf who survived, who fought, who proved that strength comes in many forms." I looked out at the ceremony, at the wolves finding their destinies, and felt something settle in my chest. Pride, maybe, or purpose. "Tell me something," I said. "That night at the first ceremony when you saw me, what did you actually see?" Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, considering. "I saw a small blonde wolf trying to hide behind a tree, looking terrified and brave and desperate all at once. I saw someone who'd fought for the right to be there, who believed she didn't deserve happiness but came looking for it anyway. I saw my mate." He turned me to face him. "I saw you. The real you, under all the pain they'd buried you in. And I knew I'd spend the rest of my life making sure you could see yourself the way I saw you." "And how's that?" I asked, though tears were threatening again. "Strong," he said simply. "Brave. Worthy. Mine." The moon rose higher, full and bright, blessing the bonds forming below, and for the first time in my life, standing beside my mate with the pack accepting me as their Luna, I let myself believe he was right. I was strong. I was brave. I was worthy. And I was finally, completely, irrevocably home. Epilogue. 1 year later, I stood in the mansion's great hall, surrounded by wolves from every territory, and made my first official decree as Luna. Any wolf experiencing abuse in their home, be it from family, pack, or mate, has sanctuary here, I announced, my voice steady despite the importance of the moment. No questions asked, no judgment rendered. We will investigate every claim, and we will protect the vulnerable. This is my promise, as your Luna, as someone who survived what others are surviving now. You are not alone. The hall erupted in howls of approval. I felt Nathaniel's pride through the bond, warm and bright. Later, in the private quiet of our rooms, he pulled me into his arms. "You're going to change everything," he said. "You already have." "We're going to change everything," I corrected. "That's how this works, remember? Together." "Together," he agreed, and kissed me like a promise. Through the window, the moon watched over us, the same moon that had brought us together, that had seen my suffering and answered with him. And I sent her a silent thank you, for seeing what I couldn't see in myself, for knowing what I needed before I knew it myself, for giving me not just a mate, but a future where I could be whole. The girl who'd lived in the attic was gone. In her place stood a Luna, a mate, a wolf who'd learned that the strongest bonds are forged in fire, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let cruelty define you. I'd been burned, but I'd risen from those ashes transformed, and I would spend the rest of my life making sure other wolves could do the same.